The second I stepped into the Grand Conservatory, I knew this night was going to be a train wreck in pearls and patriotism. My name is Helen Cruz. I'm 41 years old, live in Springfield, Illinois, and I've worked in state politics for 12 years, long enough to know that exclusive fundraiser means expensive finger food, meaningless speeches, and people pretending not to notice who's screwing whom, professionally or otherwise. The room was already thick with perfume, ambition, and the faint scent of shellfish. Donors milled about like it was prom night at the Capitol. Everyone had that look, polished and performative. And right there, in the center of the ballroom, was the pièce de résistance, a life-sized ice sculpture of a bald eagle taking a dump of Grey Goose into a crystal punch bowl. I almost laughed. Almost. Because, honestly, it was exactly the kind of ridiculous thing Marcus Dale would love. Marcus was the reason I was here, or at least the reason I had to be. State Senator Marcus Dale, technically my boss, practically my full-time babysitting job, had made it very clear this event needed to be flawless, which meant I had made sure the tables were booked, the guest list curated, the flowers sourced, and the media briefed. We even repurposed funds from our voter outreach budget to pay for the damn centerpiece. Technically unethical, practically expected. Our table sat dead center, front and smug. It was branded, of course, Dale for Illinois, stenciled in gold across white linen, flanked by glossy brochures no one would read. I scanned the room, instinctively searching for Marcus. He never entered quietly. There'd usually be a press whisper, a camera flash, or his signature booming laugh announcing his arrival before his perfectly gelled head even breached the door. But tonight, nothing. I checked my phone, no texts, no calls. I even asked the AV team if they'd seen him. Nada. Maybe he's making a statement, I muttered under my breath. What kind of statement? Asked one of the event interns as she passed by, arms full of wine glasses. The kind where he lets me twist in the wind, I said, smiling without humor. It wasn't the first time. Marcus liked to test boundaries. Show people he was the sun and we were just satellites. But even for him, being late to this, his own fundraiser, was a little too on brand. I walked toward the bar, heels echoing against marble. People greeted me by name, or something like it. Helen, one man said. Heather, said another, offering me a too-hard handshake and reeking of bourbon before 7. I nodded, polite and efficient. Politicians' wives smiled at me like I was someone's assistant. Lobbyists tried to corner me with jokes and favors. It was exhausting, but familiar. This was my world. I knew how to play it. I just didn't know where the hell Marcus was. And that, more than anything, set my nerves on edge. The room was filling fast now. Donors, aides, campaign consultants. A few mid-level bureaucrats in very expensive suits, trying not to look impressed. The chandelier light made everyone's teeth look a little too white, their laughter a little too sharp. I moved from handshake to handshake, with the ease of someone trained to smile through migraines. Great to see you again, Heather, said one of the older donors, a man with a state highway in his name and a whiskey glass permanently fused to his palm. It's Helen, actually, I corrected gently. Right, Helen, he said, already turning towards someone shinier. I didn't correct him again. Our table sat like an altar in the center of it all. Gold-plated placards, miniature state flags at each seat. 2 interns hovered nearby, eager for purpose, adjusting place settings that were already perfect. I stood just beside the table, alone but composed, scanning the crowd again for Marcus. Still nothing. That was the 6th person tonight who asked about him. Maybe he's late on purpose, whispered one of the interns. Like, a power move? If so, it was a bad one. I turned just in time to see Elliot Rowan approaching. Navy suit, slim tie, the kind of face that could sell both poison and the antidote. His walk was easy, unhurried, like he had all the time and power in the world, because he usually did. Miss Cruz, he said smoothly, taking the seat beside mine without asking. Rowan, I nodded, polite but guarded. He was the lead strategist for Nolan Beckett, our rival in the upcoming gubernatorial primary. Beckett was all charm and populist fire. Elliot was the machinery behind the smile. I'd heard people call him the scalpel. He liked that. We made brief eye contact. He had the kind of gaze that didn't blink unless it was calculated. Your redesign of the logistics rollout, he said casually, pouring himself a glass of water, was elegant. Smart pivot on regional allocation. Though I believe your boss took full credit, my throat tightened. I kept my expression neutral. He's the elected one, I said. That's how it works. Elliot smiled slightly. Some of us do read the footnotes. He didn't need to say it, but I heard it loud and clear. We know it was you. Still no Marcus. I checked my phone under the table. Nothing. One of the Capitol Press Corps staffers walked by and gave me a look. I forced a smile. Then the lights dimmed and the speeches began. A mayor, a congressional candidate, some new PAC chair pretending he wasn't 26. The room was all applause and polite grins, but behind every clap I could feel it. Where the hell is Marcus Dale? I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap, listening without listening. Beside me, Elliot didn't clap much. He just watched, the crowd, the energy, me. Everyone in that room had someone backing them, someone whose presence said, I belong here. I had no one. And the more that realization settled in, the more I felt it. Not panic, not yet, but something colder. Like the floor shifting beneath me, slow and silent, and no one else noticing. Dinner had just started. That blessed, awkward moment when everyone's too hungry to pretend they care about speeches, but too self-important to eat first. I took a small bite of some overpriced lamb dish, nodded through a joke from a health lobbyist to my left, and finally let myself exhale. I'd been holding my spine straight like a steel rod all evening, and the muscles in my back were starting to hum from the strain. No Marcus. Still. The seat with his name card, Senator Marcus Dale, in bold serif, remained untouched, napkin neatly folded, wine glass full. I had RSVP'd on his behalf. He hadn't bothered to show up to his own table. I took a slow sip of wine and felt my phone buzz softly in my lap. I glanced down, expecting a maybe on my way text or a press contact, asking where the hell he was. But no, it was from Marcus. You're out. Budget issues. Effective immediately. That was it. No punctuation, no explanation, no apology. Just a butcher's cut dropped by text between the main course and dessert. I stared at the screen, read it twice, then a third time. The lamb tasted like ash in my mouth. My fingers curled around the stem of my glass, steady only from years of practice. To my right, Elliot Rowan hadn't touched his food. He was watching the stage, but I could feel his peripheral attention shifting to me. Subtle, but focused. I didn't say a word, just turned my phone slightly like I was sharing a meme, held it in front of his water glass. He looked down. His expression didn't change much, just a slight lift of the eyebrows. Then he leaned back in his chair, rested one arm on the back of mine, and gave the screen a single, measured reaction. Huh, he said quietly. I tilted my head and raised an eyebrow. That's it? But he wasn't done. He turned his eyes toward me, not amused, not sympathetic, just studying, like something had shifted, like I'd stopped being part of the background. Helen, he said softly, voice just above the hum of the room. I wouldn't have done it by text. My lips curled, but it wasn't a smile. He swirled the ice in his water glass once, then set it down without drinking. No warning, I muttered, mostly to myself. 12 years, 6 campaigns, 3 scandals I cleaned up myself. You were expensive, Elliot said, his voice like silk over a blade. Competent people always are. He wasn't gloating, he wasn't even surprised. He sounded like a man watching a lever snap into place. I looked back down at my phone. The screen had gone black. The message was still there, somewhere, embedded under the glass, like a bruise. Budget issues. It was laughable. I was the budget. The donor coordination, the numbers, the data modeling. It had all been me. And he knew it. My phone buzzed again. A reporter, probably asking for a quote about Marcus's absence. I turned it face down and picked up my wine. Around me, the room moved on. Plates were cleared, forks clinked, conversations shifted. But something had just broken wide open. And Elliot Rowan was still watching me, not like prey. Not even like competition. Like something dangerous had just gotten born. I stepped away from the table under the pretense of taking a call. Though my phone hadn't buzzed once, I just needed air, space. Someplace where my body wouldn't feel like it was being held upright by political muscle memory. The hallway near the restrooms was quiet, dimly lit and muffled from the ballroom's noise. You could still hear the auctioneer warming up through the double doors, the rising murmur of wallets getting ready to perform. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes for a beat. I wanted to scream, or disappear, or both. 12 years of work vanished in a text message shorter than a grocery list. Then I heard them, 2 men, middle-aged expensive cufflinks, the type of voices that never learned how to whisper. I knew them both by reputation, party fundraisers, real ones, the kind who don't just dial for dollars. They engineer influence like a science. I told him, one said, if he wants the PAC to keep playing ball, he needs to deliver something real, not just photo ops, real data, voter trends, targeting tools, the good stuff. You think he'll actually hand it over? The other asked. He's slippery. Oh, he will? He's already in talks. Word is, they're setting up some back-channel deal through that shell firm in Ontario. I froze. Ontario? That's where the data dump I flagged last month had traced back to. A weird ping in the audit logs, buried under layers of proxy access. I hadn't told Marcus yet. I wanted to confirm more first. And the cruise woman? The first voice asked. She was asking around, wasn't she? I didn't breathe. Yeah, too curious for her own good. So Dale iced her. Budget cuts, officially. But you and I both know what that means. They chuckled. Smart move. She's a liability now. I couldn't move. My brain was fire and frost all at once. It wasn't the money, it wasn't ego, it wasn't politics as usual. Marcus had cut me loose because I got too close, because I found something I wasn't supposed to, because he knew I wouldn't let it go. The hallway started spinning, but I didn't sway. I pressed my palm to the cool wall and focused on a single thought. They think I'm done. I took one slow breath, then another. The men walked away, never seeing me tucked into the shadows. One of them was laughing, that low, confident laugh of someone who thinks the game is already won. When the coast was clear, I turned, walked calmly back toward the ballroom, and smiled for the first time that night. Not because I felt better, not because I had a plan, but because now I knew the truth. And that meant I had something they didn't. Leverage. When I re-entered the ballroom, everything looked the same. Same clinking glasses, same easy laughter, same overly perfumed donors flirting with relevance. But I wasn't the same. Something in me had gone still. Not dead, sharper, like a scalpel left on ice. I walked back to my seat with slow, even steps. Not dramatic, not performative, just steady, controlled. Elliot Rowan was still there, scrolling through something on his phone. One leg crossed neatly over the other like a man waiting for a meeting he already knew he'd win. He glanced up the second I sat down. His eyes searched mine, and I didn't flinch. I didn't say anything. I just reached for my water like nothing at all had changed. And everything had. You okay? He asked, voice low, almost bored. I didn't answer right away. I picked up my fork, set it down again. Then I said quietly, it wasn't about the budget. He nodded once, like he already knew, which of course he did. That's why he was still sitting here. I overheard something, I added. Shadow PAC, foreign ties, data transfers. My name came up. Now I had his full attention. Not wide-eyed. Elliot Rowan didn't do wide-eyed. But the slight tilt of his head told me everything. He wasn't just intrigued now. He was interested. Did you keep anything? He asked. I didn't answer, just sipped my water. That was enough for him. He leaned in slightly, his voice lowered to something meant for me and me alone. I spoke to 2 people this week who confirmed what I already suspected, he said. The logistics redesign Marcus has been flaunting. That was you, every line of it. I didn't blink. Your modeling cut costs by 17% across 3 regions. That doesn't happen by accident. I said nothing. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small card. His name, clean serif font. A phone number, that was it. He slid it toward me across the table, slow and deliberate. If you're ready, he said. Tonight. I looked down at the card, didn't touch it, didn't look up. Elliot didn't push, just leaned back again like he hadn't offered me a loaded weapon. You don't have to decide now, he said. But let me put it this way, the people in this room, they follow power, not titles. That part I already knew. I'd been holding Marcus together for over a decade, while he played dress-up in leadership. They followed him because I made sure the machine worked. But they never saw me, until now. I slid the card off the table and palmed it silently. That was all the answer he needed. Or didn't need. We sat like that for a while, me sipping wine, him pretending not to be calculating next steps. Around us, the auction was starting. And I wasn't spiraling anymore. I was choosing. The lights dimmed just as dessert was being cleared, casting the ballroom in gold and shadow. The soft thump of a spotlight rotated toward the stage. The auction was beginning, the real show of the night. The part where influence wore sequins, and everyone pretended this was all just philanthropy. A young auctioneer in a red dress and clipped Midwest vowels took the mic. Let's give a round of applause for our sponsors and supporters tonight. You all are the backbone of this state. Scattered claps, forced smiles. People readied their paddles. I sat motionless, watching the screen as the first few lots rolled by. Dinner with the lieutenant governor. A weekend retreat with top consultants. Some vapid leadership experience with a winery tour disguised as networking. Then the room changed. There was a shift, not loud, not even sudden, just a slow collective turn of heads. And then I saw him, Marcus Dale, flanked by 2 PR aides in matching navy suits and 2 white teeth. He walked into the Grand Conservatory like he was entering a courtroom he already knew he'd win. Hair shellacked, suit flawless, smile dialed in at 80% sincerity. Camera flashes popped before he even reached the middle of the room. He didn't look at me, not even a glance. He greeted donors like a pageant contestant, warm, toothy, detached. Posed for a selfie with the woman who'd once tried to gut our transit bill. Patted the back of a man he'd called a barnacle on democracy just last week. He worked the room like a man who had already rewritten history in his favor. And when he passed by our table, my table, he walked right past me without hesitation. I may as well have been part of the floral centerpiece. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I just watched. He took a seat at another table, still soaking in camera attention, and nodded at the auctioneer. And then it got worse. On screen, a new slide appeared. Consulting package, courtesy of the Dale campaign. There it was. My work. The whole damn package I had spent 6 months building. The policy diagnostics model, the scalable outreach modules, the multilingual toolkit, the targeting interface. It had my fingerprints on every page, every pixel. Designed to streamline regional engagement for campaigns across the state, the auctioneer announced. Built with the guidance of Senator Dale's internal team. Estimated value, $120,000. I heard Elliot chuckle softly beside me. And then, paddle in hand, he raised it. I turned toward him, brows raised. You're bidding? I asked, quiet. Oh, he said casually. I intend to win it. A new paddle lifted from across the room. Someone from the Rivington caucus. Elliot raised his again, no hesitation. Bidding climbed fast. 80, 90, 110. Elliot didn't blink. Marcus noticed then. From across the room, his smug grin flickered as he saw who was driving the numbers higher. Then he saw me. Just a flick of the eyes. A small twitch in the jaw, but it was enough. He knew. He knew this wasn't just a bid. It was a fuse. And Elliot was lighting it. The room didn't gasp, not yet, but it twitched. When the gavel dropped and Elliot Rowan's bid was declared the winner, a few people clapped out of reflex, then a few more, then the rest followed like dominoes, unsure whether they were applauding the win or just trying not to look confused. But confusion was already spreading, quietly, strategically. The package Elliot had won, the prize Marcus's campaign had donated to flaunt its consulting prowess, wasn't just some flashy brochure or borrowed policy fluff. It was a systems-level strategy I'd built from scratch, something I'd kept under lock and key until Marcus decided it was ripe enough to parade in front of donors with a new ribbon slapped on it. And Elliot had just bought it, in front of everyone. I watched the ripple start. It began at the Beckett table, where 2 junior staffers whispered behind their hands while trying not to look at me directly. Then a lobbyist I barely tolerated from the telecom sector tilted his head, clearly putting 2 and 2 together. One of Marcus's interns turned to a PR rep and mouthed, "That was hers, right?" I kept my face neutral, eyes forward. But inside, something long dormant was clicking into place. Not anger, not even vindication. Leverage. I could feel the shift happening in real time. Not loud, but tectonic. The kind of thing only seasoned operatives noticed. Because Elliot Rowan didn't need a consulting package. He needed a message. And that message was now loud and clear to everyone in the room who mattered. Helen Cruz is the value. Elliot didn't gloat. He sat there calm as ever, a hand resting loosely on the back of my chair, sipping his water like he hadn't just detonated a controlled narrative bomb. Marcus, across the room, was mid-laugh with a cluster of donors when he caught the screen showing the item had closed. I watched his smirk twitch. His eyes narrowed slightly, the way a boxer does when they realize a hit just landed. But they're not sure how hard yet. The screen changed to the next auction item, but no one was really watching anymore. They were watching me, just flickers of it. Glances that lingered a beat too long. Conversations that started to shift direction when I walked by. The subtle realignment of the invisible food chain. And suddenly, for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't background. I wasn't someone's assistant or fixer or Heather. I was a player. Elliot leaned closer and said, "Told you, they follow power." I didn't smile. I just sat there, spine straight, watching the stage. Because the room hadn't flipped yet, not fully, but it had tilted, and every single person here could feel it. Marcus wasn't the axis anymore, and he was just starting to realize it. When the auction ended, the room didn't return to normal. It just held its breath. Conversations were quieter. Phones were out, not texting, not calling, just open, like everyone was waiting for someone else to move first. The host returned to the stage, trying to re-energize the crowd with a bright voice and a rehearsed grin. "And now," she said, "we'd like to invite our top donor of the evening to say a few words, Mr. Elliot Rowan." Scattered applause followed, but it was offbeat, uncertain. People didn't know whether to cheer or brace themselves. Elliot stood, buttoned his jacket, and took his time walking to the stage. He didn't project urgency, he projected control. He didn't look at me as he passed, didn't need to. He stepped into the spotlight like it belonged to him, like he built the damn thing. "Thank you," he said into the mic, calm and crisp. "Always a pleasure to be surrounded by so many bright minds, generous hearts, and expensive shoes." That got a chuckle. "I'll keep this short," he continued, hands lightly clasped in front of him. "You've all seen the lineup tonight, heard the speeches, watched the bids, but I want to draw attention to something that wasn't mentioned." He paused just long enough to catch the attention of the few who had started to whisper. "I bid tonight on a consulting package that was credited to the Dale campaign," Elliot said. "Impressive deliverables, streamlined models, high-level impact." I felt every gaze in the room pivot toward Marcus. "But here's the thing," Elliot said, turning just slightly toward the senator's table. "That package wasn't built by the Dale campaign. It wasn't shaped by PR consultants or finance chairs. It was built line by line, strategy by strategy, by one woman." I felt my stomach knot, not with fear, but anticipation. "In fact," he said, "most of the smartest logistics and policy engineering I've seen in this state over the past 5 years, including tonight's centerpiece auction item, originated from the same source." Now he turned to me. Helen, direct, clear. Helen Cruz, gasps. Phones lifted, cameras clicked. Marcus stiffened like someone had hit pause on his blood flow. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again. Elliot didn't stop. "I've had the privilege of reviewing her work in detail," he continued. "And I can say without hesitation, terminating someone like that isn't just short-sighted. It's political malpractice." Marcus dropped his fork. A quiet clink on fine china. There was no outrage, no defense, just silence. "She's joining our firm immediately," Elliot said simply, as if he were announcing the weather. "Tonight, in fact. And I look forward to watching the next wave of state policy evolve, with her at the helm." He stepped away from the mic. No bow, no flourish, just a satisfied pause. I stood, not triumphant, not angry, just visible. The cameras turned in full now. I didn't flinch, I didn't wave, I didn't smile. I just stood there, perfectly still, perfectly clear, letting them see me, finally, for what I'd always been, the architect. That night, I didn't celebrate. No champagne, no quiet toast, no dramatic monologue into a mirror. I went home, took off my heels, tied my hair up, and opened my laptop. The grand conservatory still shimmered behind my eyes. The velvet chairs, the clinking forks, the way Marcus's face had twitched when Elliot said my name into a live mic. But that wasn't the story that needed to be told. Not yet. I pulled up the folder I'd created weeks ago, back when I first noticed the Ontario Access log. It was labeled something benign, Regional Forecast Q2. Inside were spreadsheets, emails, analytics reports, raw data cross-referenced against third-party shell accounts, logins at impossible hours, tracking tags on voter files, foreign pings masked under domestic proxies. Marcus's digital fingerprints weren't all over it, but his office router was. The text message he'd sent me, "You're out, budget issues, effective immediately," was the cherry on top. Cold, clean, stupid. I drafted the resignation letter at midnight. Effective immediately, no regrets. Attached. Documentation pertaining to unethical data activity traced to the office of Senator Marcus Dale. Copies sent to State Election Ethics Board, Internal Counsel, Senate Oversight Committee, and one watchdog group with a habit of naming names. I paused before hitting send. Then I added one more line. Consider this an opening statement, and sent it. By Monday morning, my name wasn't just trending in Springfield. It was circulating in every State House group chat from Albany to Sacramento. I didn't read most of it. I didn't need to. The real signs came quickly. Marcus was suspended from all committee duties by 9 a.m. By noon, 3 aides had resigned. One of them with a statement that included the words, "deeply troubling." An investigation opened. Subpoenas were drafted. Donors started calling each other, wondering how close they'd gotten to the fire. One news anchor called it the cleanest surgical removal of a sitting state senator's credibility in recent memory. I watched it all unfold from my new office. 21 floors up, all windows and skyline. No nameplate yet. No framed diploma. Just a laptop, a yellow notepad, and silence. The good kind. Elliot stopped by once that morning. He didn't say much, just a nod through the glass and a slight smirk, like a poker player folding a winning hand. I nodded back. That was enough. Around lunchtime, a junior analyst walked in with a fresh briefing on an infrastructure proposal. He introduced himself nervously and called me ma'am. I told him to call me Helen. I wasn't here to play royalty. I skimmed the report, asked 3 questions, handed it back. The kid walked out looking like he'd just shaken hands with a storm. And then I turned to the window again. Marcus Dale had made a career out of being seen. Loud, proud, performative. I'd made a career out of holding the machine together behind the curtain, but now, the curtain was gone, and I wasn't hiding anymore. The photo hit the political blogs by Tuesday morning. It was everywhere, cropped, filtered, dissected. Me standing beside Elliot Rowan, chin tilted just slightly, face unreadable. Behind us, the Grand Conservatory's gold-draped stage and a blurry Marcus caught mid-turn, lips parted, mid-choke. But the focus was all on me. The caption on one site read, "The real strategist steps forward." Another, "Cruz becomes the story." I didn't repost it. I didn't comment. I didn't even like the tweet. Let them talk. I had other things to do. My new office was still half empty, but it didn't feel bare. It felt clean, unburdened. There were no framed photos of glad-handing politicians, no plaques from fundraisers I didn't believe in. Just a desk, a laptop, a view of the skyline, and the sound of a city that never shut up. Good. I liked it that way. Outside my window, traffic screamed along the bridges, and every hour a new alert pinged from the inbox I hadn't opened since yesterday. Offers, requests, think tank invites, panel suggestions, a couple veiled threats. All of it noise. I stared out for a moment, letting it wash over me, not as a wave, but as background. I'd spent 12 years behind other people's speeches, other people's wins, other people's disasters. Now there was no one left to cover for. And still, I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt ready. That was the real difference. I turned back to my desk, opened the laptop, and pulled up the draft of the new statewide policy initiative I'd started outlining the night Marcus sent that text. It was better now. Leaner, smarter, unbranded. Mine. The cursor blinked at the end of a paragraph, waiting. But for once, I didn't rush to fill the space. I sat there, steady. Not because I didn't know what came next, but because I finally got to decide it. No press releases, no gloating, no grand goodbye to Marcus. He'd made his mess. Now he could sit in the silence he used to drown out with my labor. This story wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't even about Elliot. It was about the woman who kept the wheels turning while everyone else played the part. The one they called Heather. The one they ignored. The one they underestimated. I clicked back to the photo once more, studied it. Me, sharp and still, standing in the soft aftermath of a career reset. Not smiling, not smirking, just luminous. The city roared, and I got back to work.